Welcome to Voice with Vielka, the podcast dedicated to the ongoing quest for finding how to best teach kids to sing with confidence. I'm your host, Vielka, and I'll share my experiences as a performer, educator, founder, and mother for the last 20 years here in the heart of New York City. Thank you for joining me as I share with you the amazing people, practices, and talking points to help us grow together as singers, educators, entrepreneurs, and human beings. Hi, and welcome to Voice with Vielka. I'm your host, Vielka, and today I am so excited to have an incredibly inspiring guest joining us. Whether you're a teacher, a student, or someone passionate about education, you are in for a treat. Our guest today has dedicated an impressive 18 years to the Clark County School District, making a profound impact on countless young lives. She's not just any high school educator, she's a powerhouse in the classroom, using personalized competency-based learning, social emotional learning, and AI to create meaningful and transformative educational experiences for her students. Her passion for teacher leadership has taken her far and wide, engaging in fellowships at the local, statewide, national, and even global levels. And if that wasn't enough to showcase her dedication and expertise, she's also the proud recipient of the 2024 Nevada State Teacher of the Year Award. But wait, there's more. Our guest is also the recipient of the 2024-25 NASDTEC Forward Fund for the Western region of the country. And I had to look that up because there were so many initials. I'm like, wait, what does that even mean? The National Association of State Directors of Teacher Education and Certification. If that's not a mouthful, I don't know what is. But what it stands for is amazing. And she won. She is the recipient for the Western region of the country, a testament to her forward-thinking approach and commitment to education. I had the amazing pleasure of being in the very packed room at South by Southwest Education Conference this past year, where she was leading AI and the future of learning. We'll talk more about what I experienced there, which was an absolute dynamo. But please, let's go ahead and join me in welcoming the incredible Laura Jean, affectionately known as Jeanne Penrod, to the show. So Jeanne, we are so psyched to have you here today. Thank you for making time for us.
Thank you so much for having me, and what a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
Oh my gosh, you are so welcome. So so my best friend and I were at South by Southwest this year, and we came in to your session. And for those of you who didn't get to be there, you should know that Jeanne's session was a 30-minute packed room, standing room only situation. I mean, people were just pouring into that room. People were sitting on the floor off to the sides. I was like, oh, let's snag a seat. We found one. And I think what really struck me was, first off, your energy and your passion is infectious. It's really, really clear that you love what you're doing. And I think any educator would appreciate the challenge that it is to have 30 minutes to get a concept across with a very full room and to make it engaging and fun and informative and all of the things. And you were just a total rock star. I couldn't believe how engaging you made it and how much information you gave us. It was so much that I was immediately like, okay, I need to talk to her some more to unpack some of what just happened, because it was like a total just whirlwind spin, but in the best kind of way. And you just had so much to share. And I'm excited to just have this moment with you to kind of get a little bit more time with you than you actually had there. But kudos to you for such an amazing presentation that you gave there. It was awesome.
Thank you so much. It was definitely a challenge to get as much information as I wanted to share in 30 minutes. So I'm glad that it resonated and engaged with people, because that was really a big point of mine was I wanted the audience to feel engaged in the conversation.
Oh, we definitely were. You did an amazing job. And we'll have to come back to maybe unpack and give some tips of how you did that. But first, I want to start out by just giving a little bit of your background. Tell us your story. How did you get here? What was your journey into teaching?
Little kids know a lot. We don't give them a whole lot of credit, but little kids really know what they feel and are pretty good at expressing it. And I remember being 5 years old and them asking me, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "A teacher." And I came from a long line of teachers. My mom was a teacher, and seeing her in the classroom just felt magical. Seeing her ability to connect with her students and to inspire learning and to see that magic firsthand, help her set up her classroom every year. And though my mom's journey was cut short through mental illness challenges, which is unfortunate in the sense of that she couldn't maintain the classroom and take care of herself to the degree that her illness took hold, yet it was still inspiring to me what she was able to accomplish in 15 years as an educator. Unfortunately, society came in and said, "You know what? You don't want to be a teacher. You're not going to make money. It's a career that pretty much overworks you, underpays you." And I listened for a while, and I decided to pursue different avenues in college at first. And then I started tutoring foster kids. And then I realized, there's no amount of money that really provides this feeling. And though I greatly believe that teachers are underpaid and undervalued frequently, I do know that it does make a difference when you enjoy what you're doing every day. And when you feel that pull and that calling, it's really hard to deny it. When I was working with foster kids, parents were telling me, they wait all day for you to come and work with them. They're so excited. And I knew in that moment that it was far greater calling than just being a teacher, right? We are not just teachers. We become mentors, coaches, life supporters, cheerleaders, all sorts of things in a classroom when you're with kids all day or even partial parts of the day. And so I decided to come back to Las Vegas. I was in California at the time and became a special education teacher and worked in the special education realm for 5 years, working in different capacities, co-teaching, teaching independently, and then moved into a different realm of supporting freshman students in freshman studies, which was a custom course that our campus had and some schools do in Clark County School District, where we support young freshmen who come into high school and help them feel ready for that next step of high school. And so I was honored to teach thousands of students, because I would have 400 plus students a year because it was a semester course. So over the course of 7 years, you can imagine I had close to 3,000 students. And the beautiful part is I still keep in touch with many of them today and have seen their journeys go from these little baby freshmen to full grown adults that are now living their best lives, and moved back into the English space shortly after that. And have been an advisor for 14, almost 15 years in Student Council, National Honor Society, and Key Club are some of the areas I've worked. And I decided to let go of a couple of those to pursue my own teacher leadership journey. I had invested so much in cultivating student leaders for a variety of years that I decided that I got tired of the teacher complaining mode and I wanted to be in the proactive mode, not the reactive mode. And I decided to pursue fellowships. And so took the risk of joining a fellowship without knowing that we would be in the middle of it when COVID hit. And so it was 1920 when I started that journey of teacher leadership. But what a great time to be part of really meaningful change, as we were really discussing like what education looked like, and pretty much was on warp speed of continuing different fellowships, both locally, statewide, nationally, and globally, to see like, what are other systems doing that are working, and how can we make that true in Nevada and beyond, right? Which has now led to an even greater space of that thought process that with thought partners now like yourself and at South by Southwest, and with my Teacher of the Year cohort, which becomes a beautiful blended family from every state of support in how we can make education a better space for all of us, not just my space, but everyone's space. Because essentially, I believe the most successful adults in life. It's not money or things like that, though those are nice and provide ease and comfort and desires that we have. I think the most successful adults continue learning, right? We're continual learners, lifelong learners. So I will be taking over our career tech ed program that is for teacher and training, which essentially helps guide students who are considering a path of education as their future career. So, similar to Grow Your Own programs here in Nevada. And we'll be taking that over this upcoming fall. And I will still have a little bit of a hand in English, but not as much as I have had, as I am hoping to mentor and inspire some young people to become teachers as well.
Wow, that's quite a journey. It's quite
Yeah.
a journey. Yeah. And I love that you decided to become proactive and really make a change. One of the questions that I had for you is, at this time where there's a real teacher shortage and
Mhm.
teacher burnout is so real, what has inspired you to not only survive but thrive and keep going?
Well, first of all, my students always are the number one catalyst of everything that I do. I always tell them that they are the most important person in the room. Um, as an adult, I've gained some coping skills and learned some things of how to take care of myself. As a young person, they haven't gained all those experiences yet. And so they're always at the forefront of all of my leadership is, what is best for them, and also in partnership, what is best for educators, because we are the most affected by the system. And though leaders and thought partners and other people do support and either enhance or cause challenges in the system, I do think that the two most affected are us, right? So I think that always inspires me to keep going because I have seen some small incremental changes, whether that be things that I do in my classroom or even statewide, that I've been able to have impact in with policy and things of that nature. Now, it doesn't happen fast. So I think the key here is having patience and persistence and reminding yourself of your purpose, because no change evolves quickly in education. And I think though we want to strip the band-aid off, I think we have to realize that small incremental changes and benefits are still beneficial, even if it's not the whole system. I really leaned on a phrase during COVID and pass, which is leading from the seat that I'm in, right? I cannot lead from places that are outside of me sometimes because I don't have that external locus of control, but I can always have an element of control in my space of how I show up and what I do every day and how do I lead from that place. And once people see that success, then they want to be part of that success. And so then people naturally start to gravitate towards you, and you start to create what I call a coalition of the willing, the ones that are willing to be part of the process of the change, because it's much harder to inspire change with people who are resistant to it than people who are willing to join you in your cause. And so, there's a lot of people out there who desire change and growth, and they want things to look different in the education space. And so why not lean on each other and help each other to have a greater coalition to make these changes, because a collective voice becomes a much more powerful voice no matter where those voices are coming from. And I've inspired and worked with my students, even in my classroom, to also elevate their voices as part of the space, because we cannot say that it is what's best for kids when kids are not part of the conversation. They absolutely have to be.
I love so much of what you just said. The coalition of the willing, really being the change, and talking about how kids need to be at the table and be part of the conversation. It reminds me when I started grad school 25 ish years ago. My mentor at the time, she said how she had been to a conference and not once did they mention the word children. And
Mm,
that always stuck with me, of how important it is to remember why we're doing this, why we're here, and how important their voices are. So, from my little corner of the world, we have the luxury of, being more in a private teaching situation most of the time. I
Hmm.
think most of our teachers listening are private voice teachers, so we're in the music education space. And yet, ironically, I feel like or there's sort of a general sense that we're very far away from education at large. In other words, a
Hmm.
lot of people who are taking voice lessons and learning how to sing, even though you're in a teaching space, teaching and learning, you don't necessarily have an education background at all. So that, as you can imagine, is a real challenge. And I really want to share with our listeners what the best practices are, what some of these discoveries of what's working, and these conversations that
Hmm.
you're having, things that you've been implementing, where that's going in terms of like the future of education. Because I think one of the things that we have to our advantage is that we don't have to wait for policy changes. We
Hmm.
can create our own, and we create our own policies, and yet we still need that persistence and patience that you're talking about, just in terms of owning some of these language, these concepts. So maybe if we just start by breaking down for us, what is PCBL? Like, when
Oh.
I stepped into your room at South by, I was like, wait a minute. I don't think I've seen that acronym before. And I think for me, since I've
Yeah.
also been in it for a long time now, right? Like, there's a constant evolution in education of terms and ideas as we grow, right? So for those of
Yeah.
us who are like, wait, what? Can you help us like break that down and how that's
Yeah.
useful?
I'm in the process, right? Our state is in the process, Nevada, anyways, of developing, and we have developed a portrait of a Nevada learner, which essentially leans on what skills do we want our students to graduate with, and how do we want them to get there? And we're looking at the broader system of how can we personalize learning, right? And I think that is something that you all do really well, right? Because you are one-on-one or maybe even small group, you can personalize and tailor it to what students need, but yet the broader education system struggles with that when we do have 25 or 30 students in a room, sometimes more depending on people's situation, sometimes less. It still becomes a challenge when we have a very high needs special ed student, a moderate needs special ed student, a low needs special ed student. We have some, language acquisition for some of our students. We have, let's just face it, home life or external circumstances that are challenging students' learning. And so personalizing learning can be challenging if we have not actually taken that model into account. And unfortunately, a lot of education, because I'm just going to boldly say it, that the system is working as it was intended. The system was intended to be a system that produced a very linear approach of a student going through school and not really asking a ton of questions and just kind of getting through it and getting that diploma and moving on to the next thing, whether that be factory working, post-secondary ed, trade school. And the world isn't that place anymore. So let's face it, we have a very archaic education system moving through very, very progressive children. Our children are exposed to far more than any of us, as even most adults, I would say 30 plus, experienced in their own education space. So we didn't have access to knowledge as quickly as kids do. And we are, as I said in my AI talk, we are not the only disseminators of information anymore, but we are the human centered aspect of the learning experience. And so we get the opportunity to use AI and our broad technology tools to help students learn and to teach them the ethics and the civics and the morality of looking at information and critically thinking about it. And so personalized learning really takes an approach. And of course, personalized competency-based learning becomes a mouthful. I think if we think about it as we want our kids to have personalized learning. That's why we have students who you have, right, in voice lessons so that they can get personalized attention on what they need to develop and hone in on their skills. And so, as an education system, we really need to start thinking about how do we meet the needs of that student who does need to move a little bit quicker, and the other student who needs a little more time, and the other student who's right in the middle, because the prescriptive pacing guide, which is what we normally get, it does not account for those challenges. It says that students should all be at a particular place at a particular time. And as we know, with any person, it's very rare that we are all getting the information and understanding it at the exact same time. And so personalized competency-based learning leans on the model of that students either get more time or they take less time or they take whatever time they need individually. And we move away from seat time being the metric of how students learn. And we move to competency and mastery of the skills as the metric that is more important.
It's really exciting. I feel like, there are a couple of ways of looking at it. I choose to look at it as it's very exciting that we have so much available at our fingertips now in terms of technology and opportunity for change. Your website, I love that you have teaching redefined. So I love that. And at the same time, I recognize that a lot of teachers, I think, maybe not the South by crowd, but a lot of other teachers, when we talk about AI, their like gut reaction is fear. It's like, keep it out. I'm afraid. It's one more thing that is a learning curve. And I'm actually like, I like tech. I'm interested. And even for me, I sort of feel like, okay, I wish I had a little bit of a guide as to where to begin because there is so much. I'm ready to dive in though completely. I see the value. But for those who are afraid, how do you start that conversation?
I've been saying this a lot lately, but fear and hope is empty. Faith and hope has promise. And frequently in education, we are constantly in the fear space of things taking over, changing, because we have experienced so much change in such a short amount of time since COVID. I get it. I'm there with you. I understand. And yet, we are educators, we are teachers, we are the future. We have the future in our hands of these young people that are going to be exposed to these tools when they leave. So we have an immense responsibility to either foster their learning of it or foster their misuse of it. Because if we fear it, they're just going to go out into a workforce that has it. And AI's been here. Let's face it. Grammarly's been around for a long time. That's an AI tool. Okay. And guess what? It's fabulous AI tool because guess what? It's in demand, on demand teaching. So that kid makes a mistake, it underlines it really quick. The kid looks at it, accepts it. Guess what? Over time, that creates a new little neural pathway that every time that student makes a mistake, they're going to think about it again because they're like, oh, yeah, I got that wrong last time because it underlined it. And it's not direct in your face teaching of grammar. It's very like indirect teaching. And though we may not view it as a teacher, it's a tool, right? And we all use tools. We've had spell check for years, right? We've had things that have helped us in our writing or in different capacities to master or understand topics better. Years ago we had to go to the library. I'm old enough to know the card catalog and microfiche and all of these things. And yes, that did create a determination. But when my students were doing research for their legislative work this year, what was beautiful was they used the AI tool to move faster through their research. So what they did is, I need information on social emotional learning practices that are working in education because they were advocating for things in education that they think need to be present with our local representation. And it pulled up 10 links and they didn't have to search for hours and hours on end. And then they were able to go to each link and then I gave them a tool to make sure, is it a credible source? Is it an accurate source? Is it reliable? How do you know it's reliable? And it's my responsibility as the teacher to teach them how to critically use the material, right? I get to be the model of that. Or I say, don't use AI. And guess what? You're going to just do everything super hard. And we're going to bring an old encyclopedia of knowledge that's way outdated. And you cannot touch a computer. The reality is digital citizenship needs to become the wave of education. We need to be teaching digital citizenship alongside the content, right? What is the ethics of it? What is the morality of it? Should there be definitely parameters on AI? Of course, just like anything else. I think actually more congressionally, we need to think about what power the tools have, right? But I don't think that schools need to fear it taking over the human factor. I mean, we went through COVID. Nobody loved being on a computer all day long. People wanted human interaction. A teacher inspires things that a computer can't. It can disseminate some quick information for us, but then I get to inspire that student to say, hey, have you thought about XYZ as you're looking at this material? Or, hey, have you considered blank? That's where the teacher becomes a coach, right? They become the content expert and get to display that expert without the mundane tasks of sifting through things that we just don't really need to do anymore.
I love it. I mean, I hear you talking about how our role as teachers are really evolving, that we can be more of a coach, that our humanity is what really counts, to really show up and be present, that
Mm-hmm.
real person in the room, and thinking about the morality around it and how you're using the tool. Um, yeah, thinking, the microfiche, let me tell you. Like, it's unbelievable to me that I can ask ChatGPT to help me find something, and in less than 60 seconds, I have so much at my fingertips. And
Mm-hmm.
that would have been like just walking to the card catalog, or just, like we had to physically walk, climb up ladders, pull out things, get different
Yep.
machines, microfiche, record players, whatever the thing was. I mean, it was so time consuming. And I
Mm-hmm.
think for me, that's like an immediately gratifying situation, to just know that we get information so much faster. But I think what you said about the critical thinking piece, how we're asking, what we're asking, why we're asking, what are we going
Mm-hmm.
to use these amazing tools for, that's what we're fostering. Um, and I love that you're talking about like the mundane part. Are there certain things that you do now, given your role, where it used to be a mundane task and now you're like, yep, I no longer have to do that thing? Because especially when you're teaching hundreds of kids, which I have done as well, that's very different. But what I found, and tell me if this is what you found, is that if you can make it work when you have to do it at scale, then it's like you have found a way of guiding, leading, that's replicable, and that's going to be really impactful in the one-on-one as well. Whereas the one-on-one strategies might not always transfer it and be at scale. Does that make sense?
I'm definitely a project-based learning practitioner, which really lends itself to personalized learning, right? Students get to pick their topics. Students have a lot of autonomy in how they're learning and what they're learning. So my classroom is very workshop method, okay, which does allow me to give that personal attention to the kids who need it a little bit more. And I had 180 English students while I was at South by Southwest. We were in the middle of publishing a book and doing all sorts of things. And, there's tools again to help me when I'm not there. I have a learning management system platform that I no longer have to leave all of my lesson plans for a random teacher who I don't know to disseminate my information. I can now go put an announcement and my students can hear from me directly and they can email me and they know that it may take a minute for me to get back to them, but that there is someone on the other end that's going to help them through whatever that challenge is that they're having in the content. And there's no longer this disconnect between, well, she's not here, she's unavailable, she cannot talk to us. I just think about email alone has become a catalyst for the change. And though some people, of course, that can become very heavy, right? Like in our own personal time to answer emails. And I tell my students, I give them a very clear timeline. I say, I'll respond to you within 24 hours. So you do need to have some patience on the other end. But it also teaches them that there is not always an immediacy from a human as there is from a computer, right? And I do believe for teachers it has helped, right? Disaggregating data. There's lots of platforms right now with AI that help us disaggregate data and give us potential tools. Google has created an opportunity within when we create assessments that we can get remediation based off of the content and it pulls it up for us instead of us having to go search for it, right? So some of these tools that are now coming out are just supporting us in being to have less on our plates of, oh, well, now I need to go look and search for 5 videos. I don't, right? In Google, there is an opportunity that when I'm creating my assessment, that it will automatically pull up those, remediation tools that I may need to give my students to understand the concept better. And I'm not the only person that's disseminating the information. So if one student learns better through visuals, or another through different mediums, I can provide those opportunities right there with a different approach than just me. Because let's face it, I may reach 80% and there may be 20% of my kids who are still struggling with a concept that somebody else has broken down better than me. And that's okay, right? That's the purpose of these tools, is to make our lives accessible and available to students in ways that doesn't always rely on us, right? Because that's what they're going to be up against as adults. They're going to go to the workplace and they may not feel confident to ask a peer quite yet. And they're going to go ask something, whether it's Google, whether it's a chat GPT, whether it's another online AI generative tool. They're going to look for it. And again, if we teach them how to critically assess it, when they get it back, they're going to go, nah, that's not really what I was looking for. So let me ask again, because what I teach my students is the tool only works as good as the user. So you've got to be very good at asking good, careful, clear, concise questions. So your questioning becomes even more important, which if we're asking questions, that means we're thinking and we're curious, and curiosity leads to learning. So if we're asking good questions and then we're critically thinking about that response, then we're actually learning in that process. And so it's not something to fear, it's something to help lift the load off of our plates as educators, but also model and teach our students in how to use that. And even for the little guys, because I am with older kids and I get that, but I would say anywhere from fourth grade on, even third grade, those kiddos, they're exposed enough to technology to start small ways teaching them. And our kinders through like our second grade, pre-K through second, there's a lot of tools for them too, right? Like independent reading practice can be done alone and maybe a little more safe than feeling like they don't want to say it in front of their teacher because they said it wrong, or, regardless, there's a lot of great tools that are going to help lift the load, right? That I can create a layer of safety for kids as well as a layer of practice and maybe even a layer of fun in their learning that as a one woman show I can't always do. And so maybe kids can get something in a different format. So I feel like some of those mundane things that like where we were constantly searching for tools and things, those just become more immediate through some of these opportunities that we're going to be exposed to in, Google for Education is a great one. I know Meta is working with a lot of things too. So and I do think technology companies are looking for teachers. I've been interviewed by both. I don't think they're looking to replace teachers. I think they're looking to how can we enhance the experience and make the human factor more important than the technology factor.
Well, that's exciting and encouraging to hear. And I think it makes a lot of sense to me because as teachers, we're used to children, we're used to learners, we're used to the idea of scaffolding, asking questions, backward design. So there's so much critical thinking, like you were saying, that goes into using a tool and getting the output that you want. I definitely feel like I'm like in programmer mode, not really, but sort of. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I feel like I'm like mathy slash computer programmer as I like, I ask a question, give me X. And then I'm like, oh, well, actually, I didn't just want X. I wanted
Mhm.
X that had a little bit of Y and Z, and, start to refine my own thinking and get more clear about what it is I'm asking in order to get back what I want. And in terms of the music studio and voice studio, I feel like some of my listeners might be like, this is so far out of our world. But I think it's a great challenge to think about, well, is it? Because this is actually where kids are at, right? They are
Mhm.
showing up with this. And I think what you said is super relevant in that this is already their world. I feel like, in a way, we are the ones that are sort of in between and have to catch up because they are native to this.
Mhm.
And that means for me, like part of what I consider to be my job is how can I at least understand to a level where we can help factor it in, use it. As I heard you talking, I was thinking, wow, I'm kind of imagining you, Jeannie, as like a guide. Like you're my curated guide to like the internet and AI of like, hey, I have this really cool project I'm excited about and I want to do. And like in the voice studio, maybe I have a certain song I want to sing, or one of the themes that we have going on this year is we want to create an album of the year. So maybe creating
Mm.
different songs, but even just doing one song, it's like we can really bring it to life. I want to do artwork for my album cover. I need to understand what the words mean. I might want to look at different artists, what was the
Mhm.
history of this song. There's actually so much that as singers we do unpack, that I think is easily overlooked or just not known because it doesn't tend to be as mainstream.
Sure.
But um, but having all of these tools, I mean, Jeannie, let me tell you, when I was singing in another language, I had to go get the book off the shelf, be looking up word by word,
Mhm.
doing the translation, lots of layers. And by the way, I still think there's value in that, and I'm sure you do
Of
too, when you're like
course.
learning
Yeah.
math or something. Like
Of
we're not just
course.
using calculators, but at a certain point, you're like, okay, why? What's my why? Why am I doing
Mhm.
this? I'm
Yeah.
going to switch gears quickly as I see, time is ticking. I've got to learn more about this amazing honor that you have. I saw that you got to be at dinner at the White House.
I
Oh
did.
my God!
Yeah, yeah,
Congratulations.
yeah.
That's
Thank
so
you. Thank you.
exciting. Tell us about what that was like, and then more importantly, what it's like to be in that group and how it sort of changed your own practice now that you are in this new role.
In full transparency, I never saw myself as a state teacher of the year. I just always wanted to do right by kids, and so this journey has been very exciting, humbling, rewarding, all the things that you could ever imagine. And most importantly, I really wanted to use my voice, right? I am a Cuban American. My family immigrated from Cuba, where there is no voice, right? There is no say, there is no ability to even choose what you want to read. And so when I was named late September of 23, because our term year in Nevada starts in 24, so you're named usually fall of the previous year. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know what being part of a cohort of state teachers of the year. I don't even think I understood the magnitude of being your state's representation, right? And so it became a goal of mine to just make sure that I'm uplifting and sharing the need for, human-centered change in the space of education for not only Nevada, but also for everyone in the system, that we are also human beings, not human doings. And a lot of my cohort is very invested in their community and helping the space become a space that's meaningful for all of us, not just one of us, but all of us. And it's been a beautiful journey. I feel like I have 55 brothers and sisters across the country that at any point, if I need a thought partner, there's somebody who's going to meet the call. And it may not be everyone, but it may be the few that are able to connect in that moment. And we went through our very first initial meeting was in February, and we did go to Google for education. We learned a lot about AI tools and different things. And then our next journey was Washington Week, where we went and advocated in the Capitol with our legislators. We did advocacy work with the Department of Ed, with Secretary Cardona and different individuals in the Department of Education. And for the first time ever, the White House hosted a state dinner for Teachers of the Year. So this is the first time that they've ever done that. They've normally done an honoring in the White House lawn where the garden is, and there's usually a reception and tea afterwards. But you know, Flotus wanted, as an educator herself, wanted to do something a little more impactful this year, which I think we all were taken aback by, and quickly needed to go buy dresses and rent tuxedos and all sorts of things, get hair situated and makeup. And when you're going to the White House for a state dinner, I mean, there's only been, I want to say, in the history of state dinners, I don't want to misspeak, but like a few hundred state dinners. It's not many considering the trajectory of how long the White House has been around. So these are reserved for dignitaries and state leaders and, country, world leaders. So it was a huge honor. And I have to say, I've never felt more loved and celebrated in my entire life, truly, by people who really, it just felt like everybody in that room just really, really deeply appreciated what we do on a regular basis. And Flotus herself, our first lady, delivered the address to us and had talked about her grandmother who had a bell when she would ring her own students in for class. And she ended up giving us all engraved bells at the end of dinner for us to keep from the White House. So her detail, her thought process, the way she chose everything for the evening was just so incredibly thoughtful. And I think all of us left there just feeling like, wow, we really are valued, and they really do care about the system of education as a whole. And from there, we continued our journey, and we actually just went to space camp at Huntsville, Alabama together as a group. And I would have to say, and though the White House was an incredible honor and gift to feel so celebrated, I think space camp has been my favorite event, mostly because we were all kids together, and who doesn't love to play and have fun? And oh, how cool, your hometown. It was amazing experience. We got to stay in dorms and bunk with people that like are our partners in this work, and we got to really hang out and spend time together, not only celebrating each other, but cheering each other on through maybe some of the fears and challenges that we had during those times of space camp. As well as just the bonding that happened was pretty incredible. And again, I truly feel like I am in amongst a group of educators that truly value every single person in the system and really just want to make the space better. So I will say that everyone state who is listening, you have the most incredible educators in your state. And I'm honored to be in this space with them and working moving forward, because we are definitely continuing to have conversations about ungrading and what AI looks like and all of those things that we really, really want our students to experience. And I'm just incredibly grateful to be around such amazing individuals who inspire and create change. And they're not just talking about it, they are about it.
I have to tell you, it is so inspiring. I'm really inspired that there was that state dinner and that level of thoughtfulness around it, that it wasn't that it felt like it was really authentic and meaningful for you and for the cohort, and the implications of that for the country. I know there was a moment I was out with some teacher friends a few years ago, and we just started talking about, we have all been in the space for a couple decades, and we were starting to sort of go down the road of like, oh my gosh, like what are we gonna do? Like, we know that we need massive change. It's really hard. where are the where are the teachers who are sort of shining the light, figuring it out. And at the end of that, we were just kind of like, oh man, it was not my best
Yeah.
moment, not our best
Yeah.
moment. I
Yeah.
think we were just feeling a little discouraged, to be honest.
Yeah.
And it was shortly after that that I found South by Southwest, the education conference, because I only had heard of the music festival.
Hmm.
And and wow, let me just, you know, just advertise along with you. You are out there. You are there. Thank you for being there, doing the work, the change makers. Thank you for really, really pursuing and asking hard questions to see how we can do this better and how we can make changes. Really looking to honor each learner and their own needs, and knowing that we now have the capacity to do this. I mean, I think that that's the reality. It's doable now. I don't think it was,
Yeah.
well, it was harder before. I feel like there are
Yeah.
more tools now. You know, it's interesting because I think about my dad and that he grew up in a one room schoolhouse. Um,
Mhm.
and so you did, like as a teacher, but of course there were not hundreds of students there. You know, it was
Right.
smaller, but you did have different levels. But to think that we've gone from that kind of model to now revisiting in a way, like how do we
Mhm.
still get that using these new tools?
Yeah, and I do think though that like we are too siloed to some degree in education, meaning like, English is siloed from math and from science. And years ago that didn't really happen as much as it does now. And I kind of think there is some beauty in the one room schoolhouse, like working together collaboratively. Like ASU is working on models very similar to that, that there's a master teacher in the room, and then there's other teachers alongside that master teacher, and even apprentice teachers and high level tutors, and you create a space of everybody knowing those kids, right? And that if I'm not there one day, there's other people in the room that know exactly what we're working on, and who and what needs to be done in that particular day. And so I do think there's some beauty to the one room schoolhouse. I think there is. And I think that there's a way to get community and collaboration to be more present within our education system, because why isn't chemistry being taught with culinary? I
Hmm.
mean, baking is chemistry, right? Or I think lots of kids would be like, why not learn how to do a skincare line alongside chemistry, right? Like I can learn how to make my own soap, I can learn how to make skin cream. And these are things kids want to do, right? So like I think we need to be creative in partnering what they're learning and not keep it siloed, because as you know, as an adult, nothing's siloed. We write and do math and we do science, we do all these different things together, and nothing's really independent from each other. They're very interdependent and not siloed into their own little corners.
Yeah, and I have to give a plug here for all the performing arts. And of course, I'm biased music, but all of them, how
Mm.
much value there is beyond the art itself, although I 100% believe in the art itself, but that there are all these crossovers because what you're saying, there aren't, our life is not so compartmentalized like
I
that.
was a band girl. I play clarinet, so I'm a music junkie. And let me tell you, I say that bands taught me so many things that have been lifelong tools for the rest of my life. And yeah, we have 4 or 5 music educators that are teachers of the year in our cohort, and they're phenomenal,
Oh,
phenomenal
I'm so happy
people.
to hear that. That's fantastic.
Yes. Oh, yes. Mississippi. She's a band director, which is so cool to see, like, a female band director at the high school level doing marching band. And so our Georgia Teacher of the Year has done inclusive practices with music, where she has made inclusion a huge part of the music world in her state. Like, it's just unbelievable to see what music is, the universal language. Absolutely, it's important. I can't imagine not having the arts in school. It's just such an integral part of growth.
And I love this idea of cross pollinating, thank you for being here, and having a community, because I think with the siloing there's also a lot of isolation as a teacher
Hmm.
and a lot of feeling like you're alone. And maybe you have a department, so there's that, but like to really be amongst a bigger group, and I'm sure, it sounds like you're already feeling so much of that from this new cohort that you're in, that once you have a think tank like that working with different minds, that the differences actually make everyone stronger and help everyone grow.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I don't feel the pressure to emulate, right? Like, I think a lot of times in educations, people are like, how can I be like her? I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be your authentic self in that room for your kids and for yourself. But what maybe tools have I shared that can also be helpful for you in your sphere? And happy to mentor, support, guide, coach. But yet, I never want people to feel like it's an emulation. It's just solely celebration and collaboration in my world. I'm all about celebrating educators because all of us collectively bring something special to the table. And it's really never about emulation. It's all about celebration for sure.
Well, as we go to wrap up, I had asked you to put together a little playlist, a mini playlist of 5 songs, sort of reflecting where you are, at least at this moment. You chose Mitski, My Love, Mine, All Mine, Johnny Nash, I Can See Clearly Now, Stevie Wonder's You Are the Sunshine of My Life, Trevor Hall's Blue Sky Mind, and Lana Del Rey's 13 Beaches. Share
Yeah.
with us a little bit about this collection of songs and what it means to you.
So I do always tell my kids, I'm a part-time baddie, but I'm really a saddie. So I'm such an emo girl. I'm always in my feels. And the Mitski song is all about my love is really the only gift that I can leave and give freely for the rest of my life. And when I die, I hope that that's the one thing people remember me for is that it's always come from a place of love because love in its truest form is never given with expectation. It's solely given because that's what people deserve. And so I always even remind myself in my toughest moments that when something doesn't go the way that it needs to happen, or I think it should, or maybe a student misinterprets something that I said and I accidentally hurt someone because hurt is going to happen, that my love is what they still need more of. It's never going to be in the opposite direction. I can see clearly now by Johnny Nash is that I've done a lot of work independently as a human to take care of myself and as a teacher so that I can be my best self in the room. And I see clearly now that I have to give back to myself far more than I ever used to in order to be my best self for my students as well as myself. And I know we always say, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it is very true. We do need to care for ourselves and we need to create some boundaries, whatever those look like. And so I very much see clearly now that in order to be my best for them, I have to be my best for myself first. And that's a very hard thing as someone who's been a people pleaser for majority of my life. And the sunshine of my life that was my mom's song to me. And I tend to try and bring sunshine wherever I go because I feel like it's so powerful to bring positivity and inspiration. And though hope can be hard to hold on to at times, I still always want to hold on to it in the sense of that hope and action and not hope and fear, right? Like hope and continuing to move forward. Trevor Hall has become a new and fast favorite, and the Blue Sky Mind really talks a lot about is like, what do we need to do for ourselves internally and externally to be at our best? And that's what I love about that song is that, making sure we're caring for our whole selves, my students and me included, how do I care for them as well as how I care for myself? And lastly, 13 Beaches is definitely just I'm a beach girl. Being half Cuban, I think the water always speaks to me. And she talks a lot about finding the right beach and sometimes, letting go of our emotions can be just like the ocean, and feeling our emotions is very much like the ocean. And my motto this year has been be water. which is to essentially move and flow with things instead of resist. And though I may not always like how I feel or what happens, my responsibility is to let the turbulence happen because there will be calm afterwards. And unfortunately, we sometimes have to go through that in order to get to the other side.
Oh, that is so beautiful. And I think you really reflect the love and being the water in what you've shared with me. So thank you for that and being that presence for so many. Rapid fire round, just whatever comes to mind. Don't overthink it.
Okay.
Singing is fill in the blank.
Singing is joyful.
Teaching is
Love.
you're nervous walking on stage. What's the first thing you do?
Smile.
You're home alone. What piece do you love to perform or listen to when no one's around?
Definitely Lana Del Rey.
What's an example of something ordinary you find extraordinary that you're grateful for?
The universe.
We're celebrating you. The sky's the limit. How do you want to celebrate?
With all of my favorite people, which would be my students, my colleagues, my family, my pets. Yeah, all the people who have been such a great support system in my life.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Jeannie, it has been such a treat having you here. Thank you so much for your time, for sharing your expertise, and mostly for just being a force of greatness and goodness in the world and affecting so many lives. I know that you're having a ripple effect and that our listeners are going to feel it too. So thank you. Listeners can find you at your Instagram at Jeannie79. Your website, and we'll list everything in the show notes, is laurajeanpenrod.com. You also have a LinkedIn page if people want to find you, and you're on X with the handle at Mrs. Pencil Stick, given to you by students. Right?
Yep.
Odd pen- they all come up with the best things anyway.
Yes, they.
Yeah, we just have to be there and help them. So you'll also, speaking of shining, be at the in education with World coming up at Google. So good luck to you with that.
Thank you.
All your future endeavors. I look forward to following you and to learn more from you.
Thank you. Same.
All right, thanks. Thank you for joining me for this podcast. To learn more about my step-by-step approach to voice education, where I've consolidated 30 years of vocal study into 4 words even a 3-year-old can do, just go to www.vielka.com. That's Vielka.com. Happy singing.